Pro-choice, in my experience, doesn't give you a choice at all. I was in and out of that abortion clinic so fast, I really didn't even know what had happened to me. So I stuffed it down in a hole somewhere in my soul, and that's where it sat for decades. My name is Michele Pillar. My father was really kind even when he was drinking, but my mother was not kind when she drank. She would become angry and irritated. You would call me more of a shy child, being the youngest of 4 sisters. When you see your sisters derailing with drugs, alcohol, men, is that you get to make better choices. I got hooked on a much more dangerous drug. It's called perfectionism. From the time I was a little girl, I had a turntable in my bedroom, and I fell in love with music. The Beatles were such a huge part of my love for music. I mean, they hit America, and every little girl went crazy. And I was one of those little girls. The Beatles taught me how to sing harmony. I had a couple of teachers that were really encouraging. So I started singing in nightclubs when I was 16. I had to lie about it. They thought I was 18. Looking back, it was a safe place. It was an escape of sorts. In my senior year of high school is when I started dating Jim, who was 8 years older than I was, and he was actually a teacher at a neighboring high school. I was 17. Never dawned on me that that was a problem. In short order, I found myself pregnant. I was already very much committed, going into rehearsals for the City Queen pageant. And so when I actually won and I was walking the runway just crying my eyes out with the roses and the crown and what seemed like tears of joy, I was crying tears of, oh my gosh, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And I looked down at the audience and my mother was so proud, clapping her hands after everything she'd been through with my sisters. And now here I was, doing something that she could be proud of. My goodness, I wasn't gonna tell anybody I was pregnant. I went up to Jim's door and knocked on the door and told him I was pregnant, and he pretty much shut the door in my face. That was really hard because I was alone in this journey, or felt like I was. And off I went to the county hospital. And I walked in and it was dark. It was dismal, really. And there were little metal chairs lined up against a wall. The chair was kind of beat up and had really short powder blue shorts on that I had worn in the beauty pageant. And I could feel the cold metal on the back of my legs. And a woman came out from the side office and she pulled up her own little metal chair and placed it right in front of me. And she had this big smile on her face. And she said, I can't wait to tell you. There's a new law that's been passed. It's called Roe versus Wade, and now you have choices. She told me that I didn't have to tell my mother, even though I was a minor. She told me I didn't have to tell the father of the child. The third thing she told me was the biggest lie of all. She said I would come out of this procedure just fine. No one ever said to me anything about another choice. And so I listened, and I made my appointment and came back a few days later, and it was over. I did find the Lord 3 weeks after my abortion. I walked up to my friend Sam, who had talked with me about Jesus a lot, and I said, Sam, could you tell me a little bit more about this man, Jesus? Because I was painfully aware that given to my own devices, graduating from high school and being out in the big bad world, I wasn't going to make all the best choices, and I needed help. The abortion was such an atrocity to me that I stuffed it down in a hole somewhere in my soul, and that's where it sat for decades. So when I started singing professionally, I was singing in bars, doing top 40 songs, taking my check and going home. Then I graduated to becoming a background singer on records. After I became a Christian, I was asked to sing on a worship album, and then that led to me becoming a solo artist later. My records did well on the radio, and I started having top 5 and then number 1s, and That led to being asked to be part of the Billy Graham crusades. And so oddly enough, when I'd be at a Billy Graham crusade and I would step my foot onto that platform in front of 40,000 people, that's when the regret would well up inside of me. I'd feel like someone was pointing their finger at me, saying, oh, if Billy Graham only knew that you've had an abortion, you wouldn't be up here. So you never feel like you're quite worthy of what you're doing.
Michele Pillar and Al Green.
Right after my third Grammy nomination, after I had been on the Grammys, only months later would my whole career just come to a stop. I just literally blew the whole thing up myself by having an affair with a married man. When I lost my music and my career forever, I can never explain the heartbreak of that. It caused me to grab onto God with everything I have, which I'm so thankful for. And the Lord then began saying, okay, now we have a place to start. You're willing to hear me, and you're willing to find answers. So for the next 10 to 12 years, I became comfortable in the quiet. One by one by one, we went back through the archives of my life, and God began to touch and heal and give me understanding. What made me go back into any kind of work was that stirring that most people are really well aware of who have walked with God for any time. And sometimes you don't know what that means or what it looks like. And it started to look much like it could be a book, but I would have never considered myself an author. Somewhere in that journey, I called my friend B.B. Winans and I said, let's try to write a song together. The night before the writing session, I said a very simple prayer. I said, Lord, what do you want us to write about? And I put my head down on the pillow, and I had a dream. I was in a green, beautiful field, and there was a little cabin tucked in the woods, and the door flew open, and out ran hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of little children. It was different than a dream. I really knew that somehow I had been transported to heaven. Out of the crowd of children came this little boy, and he knew exactly who I was. He walked up to me, and I reached my hand out, and he touched my hand. And as soon as our hands touched, I knew exactly who he was. I knew he was mine. He smiled as if to say, everything's okay. He wanted me to know that he forgave me. And then he just turned and ran. I felt like God said to me, Michele, now it's time for you to heal. And I woke up from my dream, tears running down my face. I drove to that writing session and I walked up to B.B. And so B.B. Winans was the first person I told about my abortion. And I cannot tell you what healing that brought. Abortion is not a procedure. Abortion is pillage to the soul. And now I'm going to talk about it in all broken, hopefully loving humility. I'm going to tell the world that it's a travesty. And I just hope that one girl can hear it.